And welcome to the virtual inaugural meeting of the Board of Directors of the Toronto Senior Housing Corporation. As a City of Toronto Corporation, the Board of Directors acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. The board also acknowledges that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississauga of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. My name is Maureen Quigley, and I am honored to have been appointed by City Council to serve as the first board chair. I look forward to facilitating a governance culture within our board that is tenant-centered, open, collaborative, and based on recognized good governance practices. This inaugural board meeting is the culmination of several years of hard work by many people. In 2017, the City of Toronto Council made a strategic decision to integrate city programs and services for seniors and responsibility for management of the 83 seniors designated buildings within the Toronto Community Housing Corporation under a new seniors housing and services entity separate from Toronto Community Housing and more directly accountable to City Council. In the intervening years, significant work has been done by City Council, City staff, and the Toronto Community Housing Board and staff to lay the foundation for this day. The core mandate of the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation is to provide subsidized rental housing in a state of good repair to low and moderate income senior households in Toronto and support aging in place through the delivery of the integrated services model. On May 5th, 2021, City Council officially approved the launch of the new Seniors Housing Corporation and appointed its first board of directors, following an extensive public recruitment and selection process. Brief biographies of the 9 members of the board can be found on the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation section of the City of Toronto website. At this time, I will ask each director to identify yourself by raising your hand when I introduce you. Lawrence D'Souza.
Lawrence.
Linda Jackson. Welcome, Linda. Warren Law. Carrie McNeil, Tenant Director. Jim Meeks, Tenant Director. Brenda Paris. And then Councillors Paul Ainsley and Paula Fletcher. And ex officio board member Chris Murray, City Manager of the City of Toronto. On behalf of the board, I would like to express appreciation to the City of Toronto and Toronto Community Housing staff for the recent initial orientation, and also to remind directors to please complete the evaluation survey to inform planning for our next orientation. I would also like to acknowledge and thank the numerous City of Toronto staff who have been involved in preparing for and supporting the board meeting today, some of whom will be introduced in relation to specific agenda items. I would also like to welcome our interim corporate secretary, Monique Hutchins, Managing Director of DSA Corporate Services, who has circulated the agenda and will take the minutes of our meetings. The agenda for this meeting is focused on the legal and procedural matters that will give the authority to the board to govern the new corporation and meet specific accountabilities to the City of Toronto as its sole shareholder. Over the next year, with the support of transitional staff to facilitate the startup of the corporation, we will gradually assume responsibility for the 83 seniors housing buildings, the integrated services model of support services, and the relationship with our 14,000 tenants. As with all City of Toronto corporations, our board meetings are open to the public, with the exception of a closed session to address specific matters of a confidential nature that are clearly defined in our governing legislation. While we do not yet have the technology in place for a live broadcast of this inaugural virtual meeting, it is being recorded and will be available on the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation page of the City of Toronto website. Finally, as we begin our work together, I'd like to give a very special thank you and congratulations to Juliana Carboni, Deputy City Manager, for her leadership in making the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation a reality as she begins her retirement later today. So with that, I would now ask for a motion to approve the public agenda as presented to the board, and may I have a mover and a seconder if you could raise your hand. Mover, Lawrence, seconder, Linda. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Just before we get into the first item, just so you know, procedurally, we will put the resolutions on the screen before the vote is called on each of them, and then it'll be taken down so that I can see your hands for a vote. Because I cannot see everybody, I'm really going to have to ask Monique or Jen to help me to make sure that I acknowledge both the mover and seconder, and also that I know who wishes to speak on particular matters as we move forward. So that's unfortunately, I at the moment I can only see 5 people. So anyway, so I have a mover and seconder. We have the agenda carried. So that takes us to item 3, the conflict of interest. And before I ask for any conflicts of interest, I'd just like to ask Michael if he would review the circumstances for conflict of interest.
Members of the Board of Directors of the Seniors Housing Corporation should not appear to have a conflict of interest, which is a conflict between their personal financial interests and their duty to act in the best interests of the corporation. Slide 2, please. Hello, may I have slide 2, please?
I'm sharing slide 2. Can others see this?
Am I disconnected? Okay. Slide 2, Bylaw 4.15 of Bylaw number 1, which will be considered at this meeting, reflects the requirements of the Business Corporations Act. In addition, the regulations under the City of Toronto Act, directors of the corporation are subject to the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. The councillors on the board will be familiar with this legislation. My presentation is intended to be a guide on the requirements of both pieces of legislation and what may constitute a conflict of interest and when to disclose a potential conflict of interest. Conflict arises when when either the director, their spouse, parent, or child are party to a material contract or transaction, are a director or officer of or have a material interest in any person who is a party to a material contract or transaction, or are a shareholder, director, or senior officer of a corporation or member of a body that has a financial interest in the matter. If they are a partner of a person who has a financial interest in the matter, or employed by a person or body that has a financial interest. May I have slide 3, please? So the requirement is a director shall disclose to the corporation the nature and extent of their interest in the matter in writing, or a request can be made at the meeting to be entered in the minutes prior to the meeting being considered. During an open meeting, the director shall not take part in the discussion, vote on any question related to the matter, and shall not attempt to influence voting at any time. During a closed meeting, the director is expected to leave the meeting while the matter is under consideration. That concludes my presentation.
I ask a question?
I'm still on a question of Michael.
Yes.
Okay,
Um,
yes,
the conflict of interest seems to imply familial relations.
yes.
Is there any requirement for anyone to recuse themselves if they have personal knowledge and contact with the item at hand or the person at hand? For example, the hiring of any contractors or consultants. I mean, this was an issue in the Toronto Community Housing, and for purpose of the transparency, I think there should be either some recusal aspect or some statement of connection.
This is outside of a family connection, you're asking?
Yeah.
It can always be disclosed. I think the recusal, I think that may be a policy that the board may wish to address. But as a matter of law, it is only if there's a pecuniary or financial interest.
Okay.
And that interest is that of the director or a member of their family, being a child, partner, or parent.
Okay.
That's the legal requirement. The
I
board might
understand.
have a different policy.
All right.
Can I, Maureen, sorry. Councillor Fletcher here. I want to just welcome Councillor Ainsley's on the line and our Deputy City Manager outgoing last meeting on the line. We recognized her earlier. Just on that, I think the board isn't going to be hiring or approving contracts, but it really has to do with ensuring that there's nothing going on when the staff are recruiting or hiring, which was the issue earlier
Yeah.
at Toronto Community Housing. So
Uh-huh.
for the board, we're just going to hire a CEO or a lead. And there may be times where we would have to have a board-led something or other, hire a professional, in which case you might say you know somebody, but it's not a conflict of interest.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's
Are
it's
there
a
any
good
oth-
question.
it's the creeping old boys network is always, I'm concerned about transparency and openness and who gets asked to be at the table, right?
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions of Michael? And are there any declarations of conflict? I believe there were none.
You know, seniors start at 8:30 in the morning. Chris
So
Murray's like, "Are you going to be joining us?" Well, yeah, it starts at 9:30, and he's like, "No, it starts at 8:30." And I'm like, "What is happy hour at 4:30?" And he goes, 11 a.m. in Newfoundland.
Councillor Ainsley,
Councillor Ainsley, you're not on mute.
muted.
Sorry, my apologies.
Thanks very much. Welcome. All right, so can we move on to the next item of business, which is the filed articles of incorporation, and Rima Patel is going to address this.
Hi, thanks very much, everybody. So as you'll all see in your board package, we have a report on the Articles of Incorporation. So the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation's Articles of Incorporation were submitted to the Minister of Government and Consumer Services on June 23rd, 2021, after which the corporation came into existence. The Certificate of Incorporation, which you'll see in your board package, is conclusive proof that the corporation has been incorporated under the Ontario Business Corporations Act on the date specified. And as you'll see in the proposed resolution, a copy of this certificate is proposed to be inserted in the minute book of the corporation.
Thank you, Rima. So the resolution, Monique, if you could put that on the screen. So you have the resolution in front of you. May I have a motion, mover and a seconder to receive the filed articles of incorporation? And again, please identify yourself. I can only see 5 people, so.
That's Carrie.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Fletcher.
Councillor Fletcher, thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. That takes us to item 5, the approval of the share certificates. Michael, would you speak to this quickly, please? Michael Smith?
Sorry, I was on mute. The form of share certificate is a common form of share certificate. A form is required to be adopted by the board to officially represent the shares of the corporation. The resolution that will be passed authorizes who may sign it, and then there will be a resolution. The included resolution is the number of shares to be issued to the City of Toronto.
Thank you, Michael. Could you bring up the resolution, please, Monique? And this is a four-part resolution, which you've already had a chance to review. So could I have a mover and a
Move.
second? Move is who?
Warren.
Warren, thank you.
Seconding Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Any
Yes.
opposed? Carried. Thank you. We move now to item number 6, the adoption of the general bylaw. What I'm going to suggest here, in light of the fact that we have to move into closed session at 9 o'clock to accommodate Julian Carboni's schedule today, I'm going to suggest that Michael do his presentation before we have the closed session, and then we will have any questions and discussion after the closed session. So Michael, could you do the overview of the bylaw at a high level so that we can then conclude at 9 o'clock?
Yes, so presentation is coming up on bylaw number 1. The bylaws are a detailed set of rules adopted by the corporation's board of directors after the corporation has been incorporated. They're an important legal document to have in place as it specifies internal management structure and how it'll be run. And next slide, please. Currently, the city's address, registered address, is in care of the city solicitor. This can be changed when the corporation establishes offices. This board may also adopt a seal in the future. It's not required to be done immediately. Next slide, please. Composition of the board has been approved by council, has been directed by shareholder direction, and is designed to give representation on the board. The qualifications that we've described in the eligibility criteria are specific skills and experience desired for each board, and board members are collectively cover a range of required qualifications with individuals bringing a variety of perspectives, interests, and skills. Next slide, please. The eligibility criteria is governed by the City of Toronto Public Appointments Policy. There are two, in addition to those matters that disqualify a director under the Business Corporations Act, the Public Appointments Policy requires that persons selected for an appointment be residents of Toronto and at least 18 years of age. Next slide, please. The term of is 2 years. There's a limit on the length of service for citizen directors, which is a cumulative total of 8 years. They can be reappointed every 2 years. For directors, it's also during their appointment to the panels, or I'm sorry, the committees that they are members of. That are specified in the shareholder direction in the bylaw. Next slide, please. Vacancies. Only the shareholder will fill vacancies. There is a provision under the Business Corporations Act that would have allowed, subject to the bylaws, the board to fill a vacancy, but the city has chosen to retain that authority. And a vacancy occurs when the director is resigned, ceases to be qualified, they are removed by city council, or their date of death or other incapacitation. The chair is appointed and a vacancy is filled by the shareholder. The vice chair is elected by the board. Next slide, please. Meeting of directors. Article 4 sets out the rules for virtual meetings, schedule of regular and special meetings, notice, attendance, quorum, the role of the chair and vice chair, and majority voting. This is all fairly common. There is a provision that grants the chair the choice of casting a tie-breaking vote. It's not necessary that he or she do so. It also authorizes unanimous written resolutions instead of meetings. In terms of delegation to a committee, the board may delegate any of its authority to a committee that's permitted under the Business Corporations Act. There are certain matters that can only be decided by the full board. Majority is, the committee may decide upon its own form, but it has to be not less than majority. Slide, please. One of the unique requirements that the city has as a shareholder is that meetings be open to the public, certain exceptions. This is based upon the premise that the public has the right to participate in the decision-making process in order to support transparency and accountability in the public sector. The meetings of the board have to start and end in public session. The board moves into closed session by adopting a motion that the meeting is a closed meeting. The general nature of the matter is considered at the closed meeting, and the reasons the matter requires a closed meeting. That authority is found in the bylaw. Decisions that are made following discussion in a closed meeting must be adopted in an open meeting. The only person entitled to attend is the Auditor General. Anybody else, it must be at the invitation of either the chair or the majority of the board. Next, please. Next, our bylaw deals with the standard of care. First of all, there's a list of officers that the board is expected to appoint. They may also appoint other officers in their discretion. Standard of care requires the bylaw requires the same fiduciary duty and standard of care as required by the Act. And Section 702 is a limitation of liability and establishes reasonable limits on the liability of the directors and the officers. The indemnification provisions. In the original board package, there had been an indemnification. We proposed to amend it after review to make it more comprehensive. The board may also purchase and maintain D&O insurance. I believe that's in our upcoming work package. Next slide, please. Shareholder meetings. These are held as a council meeting. Who is the shareholder? It would have to be arranged in collaboration with the clerk. Under our bylaws, the city at all times is going to remain the sole shareholder of the corporation. Next slide. Dividends. Until the board approves of a particular signing authority policy, the bylaws provide that 2 directors are authorized to sign documents. Banking and fiscal, that gives the proper authority to arrange banking matters, and the effective date outlines when, how new, amended, or repealed bylaws take effect. So that's the end, I believe. Is there another slide? That's the end, I think, of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Michael. So at this time, we are going to just adjourn the open session and move into closed session. So could I have a mover and seconder for the resolution that the board close part of the meeting to the public to give consideration to confidential matters related to employee negotiations as required by Bylaw 1?
So
So
moved.
moved, Linda.
Warren and Linda.
Linda?
Linda, thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. So at this time, the staff, with the exception of Jen St. Louis, will be leaving the meeting.
I'm resuming the recording, Maureen, just so folks know that
Okay.
the recording stopped in camera session.
Okay, so now we have a resolution arising from the in-camera discussion that we have had an opportunity to review. Again, could I ask the mover, I believe it was Warren? And who was the seconder?
Carrie. Carrie McKeon.
Carrie, thank you. Sarah, yes, thank you, Carrie. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. We'll now move back into the discussion of the general bylaw. And we had the overview from Michael. So first of all, are there any questions? As Michael noted, there is an amendment to clause 8 regarding the indemnification, Article 8, that was requested as prior to the meeting. Warren raised the question of the completeness of the original drafted article. And so I asked the legal team to review it, and as a result, they came back with an amended article for Bylaw 1, for Article 8. And so if that is acceptable, then we would approve the bylaw with an amendment. In the meantime, are there any questions for Michael about the bylaw? Yes, Brenda?
I'm just a little confused here. This is the Article 8. This is regarding the.
It's regarding the indemnification of officers and directors.
Yes, that, okay. And there was a comment made that there was some change. What was
Yes.
what was the nature of the change? I didn't have the.
Michael, could you?
I can answer that, but Brenda,
Yeah.
the original Article 8, and I hope I'm not going to too much definition explanation,
Yeah.
had been
fine.
borrowed from the Toronto Community Housing Bylaw.
Okay.
But when it was reviewed, and I had the opportunity to consult via email with Warren, he felt it wasn't comprehensive enough.
Okay.
And when I
understand.
reviewed it, it was clear to me. First of all, it wasn't absolutely clear that it covered an indemnification for damage awards or monetary penalties that
Yeah.
a director
Yeah.
might face. And it also didn't encompass all the other matters that may be indemnified by a corporation that are enumerated in the Act.
Yes. Okay.
So I reviewed, and in order to keep in sort of alignment with what council has approved in the past, I went to the Toronto Hydro bylaw.
Oh,
And that's a bylaw that's been approved in the past by council. And it's much more comprehensive. Warren felt that it was comprehensive. And it does, the actual indemnification itself is attached to the resolution. It doesn't appear on screen right now.
yeah.
But it
Okay.
very clearly articulates a broad range of indemnification that's permitted by legislation.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's very helpful.
Are there any other questions for Michael? Okay, so if not, could I again have a motion to adopt general bylaw number 1? The resolution is on your screen. Could I have a mover?
Warren moves.
Thank you. Seconder?
I'll second. Brenda.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. So that takes us to item 13, the process to select the vice chair. As you will see in your package, I have put forward a suggestion as to how we engage in the selection of a vice chair for appointment at our September board meeting. And I've provided the context both from our orientation and from the bylaw. I inquired as to whether there were any requirements of the city as to the process by which a city corporation board selects the vice chair, and there are not. I've also asked for and received information about how other city corporations engage in this process, and there is a range of processes, I think, ranging from the chair determining who the chair would like to have as vice chair and recommending that to the board for approval, and then ranging to the other extreme of having candidates, basically a nomination process in which candidates are nominated by themselves or each other, and then a vote. So I, based on my own experience, I did not want to make the decision on my own. I want it to be inclusive, open, and I am welcoming all comers. So I hope that people will, who wish to fulfill this role, will make your interest known. Then I would like to have, as I indicated, a small nominating panel, an ad hoc nominating panel comprised of myself, one councillor, and one public member who's not expressed interest in the chair, to meet with the candidate or candidates, have a discussion about their interest, and then make a recommendation to the board. So that is what I'm proposing, and so I welcome any questions or comments, and then we have a resolution. So are there any questions or comments for me? And if you, Kevin Lee is able to speak to the experience in other agencies if anybody wants to ask any questions about that beyond what I've already said. Any questions? No?
Just, I can't open all my documents. Could you just, the criteria that you've set, Maureen, would be helpful.
So the criteria that were in our orientation, that in terms of the role of the chair, were the objective chairing of meetings and keeping the public informed of the status of our business, representing the board to the public, media, stakeholders, and council, supporting the board capacity and participation of board members, and then specific rules in the procedural bylaw, because essentially the purpose of the vice chair is to fill in for me in the event that I were not able to fulfill my responsibilities, and therefore it has to assume that it is fulfilling all the responsibilities of chair. That okay? So any further discussion? Question?
It might be worth to note, it does not assume that somebody has to take on the chair permanently. Sometimes vice chair roles are kind of the successor, and sometimes that's actually what prevents people from putting their name forward. I'm assuming that is not the expectation, that there's a different process for somebody moving into the permanent chair role. Just a comment.
That's great. And thank you for that, Linda. In fact, exactly. As you know, the appointment, selection and appointment of the chair is the prerogative of council. And so, and in fact, one of the questions was raised in reviewing the bylaws is, in the event that the chair were to have to vacate the chair's position, wouldn't it be sensible to have the vice chair just as become the chair? But that we don't have that prerogative. That is a prerogative of council, which goes through their own selection process, as they did when I was asked to take on the chair. Thank you. So could I have the resolution, please, Monique, on the screen? And could I have a motion to approve, a mover and a seconder for this resolution? A mover?
So moved, Paul.
Paul, thank you. Seconder?
I'll second it.
Who was that?
Jim Meeks.
Thank you, Jim. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. And so the next step on this would be that I will early next week send out a message to all of the directors with a request for expression of interest, and then take it from there once I receive the responses. And we will come back with a recommendation for the September board meeting. Item 14, the financial letter from the city manager. Would you speak to this, Jen? Deputy City Manager, I'm sorry.
Yep, sure. Thank you, Maureen. So this letter is presented for information to the board from Juliana, and it outlines the allocated budget and reiterates that the city will take on the responsibility for administering that budget until the transitional lead is in place. There are signing authorities and satisfactory oversight and financial policies in place at the corporation. We wanted to give some comfort to the board that you do in fact have a budget behind you when you're making decisions in the interim. So this is for information.
And so we have a resolution to receive the report for information. Could I have a mover? Brenda, thank you. Seconder.
Excuse me, I just wanted to ask a quick question.
Oh, yes, sorry.
There's no budget attached to my documents. Was that, or is it just me, or?
No, so we are looking to the transitional lead with the board's approval to create a budget. So we have a, you know, we've mocked up a budget essentially with line items that the city believes the corporation will need in this first 6 months, but it will be up to the transitional lead and the board to actually establish a budget.
Okay, so the budget will come back to us. All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a question, Lawrence here.
Yes, thank you.
The letter talks about establishing procedures for budget oversight. When it will be done and who will be doing this?
So it's the expectation that the transitional lead that will be high on Michael's tasks to do, to put the corporation in a position to be operationally, to be operational from a financial perspective.
And Lawrence, in addition, of course, one of our to-dos as a board, which I was going to speak to under the work plan, but we will be putting in place, I hope by the end of the year, a board committee structure which will assume the board level oversight of the both the approval of the budget and then the oversight of the budget as we move forward.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So I had a mover and a seconder. All in favor?
Yeah.
Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. So that takes us to item 15. The Board of Directors preliminary work plan. Again, in your package, you have a document from Jen, which sets out the activities that are contemplated at this time between now and the September 28th board meeting. I would say just before we get into these particular items, I've in the discussion with the successful candidate for the transitional lead, we did talk about the high priority that I and we both attach to having a critical path and work plan that will take us over the next 12 months, that we will bring back to the board so that we all understand exactly what the steps are and who is to do what. So I say that as an overarching, recognizing that this is taking us to the just to the September board meeting. So Jen?
I'm just going to share the document here. Is the document on the screen? I can't really see it.
Yeah, you can see.
Okay, you can see it. Okay, so the preliminary work plan really outlines key areas that they are corporate areas where we feel like the board needs to, you know, have a critical path forward, a work plan moving forward. Knowing that the board isn't meeting again until September 28th, we wanted to highlight some of the areas that we felt potentially could be decided on through written resolution. This is really a preliminary draft work plan, and we will work with Michael and Maureen to, you know, modify this and to really get these pieces of work done as quickly as possible through proper board processes.
So are there any questions for Jen related to any of the specific items?
Yes, I do. The selection of the executive search firm, please. The
Yes.
transitional
Brenda?
lead and chief.
Sorry,
Yeah,
is that Paula or Brenda? I'm sorry.
it's Paula. It's
I'm
Paula.
sorry, Brenda. Thank
You
you.
can't see because all we can see is the screen with the work
Yes,
plan.
thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
It is transitional lead and C is CO, Chief Operating Officer, to engage an executive search firm to hire the CEO and other officers as needed. So I'm just not clear if that's hiring the firm to start the search for the permanent CEO, Maureen?
Yes, that is. And in fact, I have already indicated to the to Jen and her team that I would expect that either myself and or another board member would be directly involved in the selection of the executive search firm because from my own experience in executive search, the selection of the firm is the most important first step in a successful selection of the candidates. So
Yes, thank you. I agree with you. I'm sitting on 3 of those at the moment. We just hired the CEO for Toronto Community Housing. I'm sure everybody saw that announcement. But I don't think that's the role of the transition lead. I think that's the role of the board to establish to hire the search firm, to recruit. And I'm not sure why it's set out in this way. Maybe Jen could tell us.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor. We did envision that the transitional lead would do it from a staffing perspective with board input. So I think it was just to have somebody who would manage the relationship with the executive search firm. So again, this is
Generally,
definitely
that's done through,
and
yeah. Yeah, I think that I think we need to change that the committee could get support either in any ways from him, from Jen, from others, but it is going to be the corporate leader, the CEO, and the board should be in charge, I think, of this process.
If it's Michael Smith, if I could add to this, you'll see that there's a third column method for approval. And beside that is written resolution circulated by your email. So that is the resolution of the board to approve. So that's what's been anticipated. Because there won't be a meeting until September 28th, a board is allowed to pass resolutions if they're unanimously adopted and signed. And that's the way we propose to approach it.
I'm not sure what you mean, Michael. I'm not sure what you mean. I'm talking about the board leading the recruitment, not the transitional lead.
could I just interject here? I have already indicated that, first of all, I think it's fair to say that the word that should be emphasized in this work plan is preliminary. This was prepared by the staff to give us a sense of what is on our plate between now and September.
And to get our feedback, correct?
Yes. And my intention is to amend this work plan reflecting his input with the transitional lead once that person is in place. And so your input at this stage is very important, but I would say at this point again, I would not contemplate having board approval of the selection of a search firm by email. I think that is a matter that must be discussed by the board at a formal board meeting. And that also applies to the retention of legal counsel for the corporation. So this is very much preliminary, but I really would welcome your continuing thoughts as to how to make sure that you are comfortable with.
I don't think that maybe I'm not as clear as I could be this morning. I don't think it's just the board's role to approve the search firm. I think it's the board's role to establish a committee if we wanted Maureen there and others. If we'd like to have the transitional lead on it, he's not leading it. It would be led by Maureen or a named board member. And that search firm would then be determined, and how we recruit the CEO is a matter for the board. It's the only position that the board has full authority over. All of the other positions are determined through our administrator. So I think we need to capture that clearly here in the preliminary plan. And I also think that the legal counsel, who generally serves as the corporate secretary for the board, they have a dual role. They're the counsel for the corporation, also the dual role. That's very important, that position be determined completely with Maureen, if we'd like to amend that. So I don't know if you want to amend that, Maureen, but I don't think it clearly reflects a good governance process at this point. And I appreciate this is just a preliminary. It's a thinking document, and that's my thinking. I don't know if I need to move that motion, but I will if you think that's helpful.
Can I comment on that? I agree with some of the comments. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I support some of the comments Paula has made, and a number of comments this morning indicating an issue of direction and process and diversity and the quality things that we're interested in. And if you don't build it in from the get-go, then it will get lost. Okay. And I see in the preliminary work plan, most of the things are what I would call formalisms. Okay. But the meat of the senior position is really where we should and have involvement in decision-making and process. And I want to ensure that whatever selection firm is chosen really understands that. I mean, we've all been headhunted in some sort of way, so I know how this game works. But I keep on saying, who gets invited to the table? Who gets to be considered? And our concern about the lack of housing background, lack of seniors, we all know who gets shortlisted for these things. And I want to make sure that that's a broader depth than we have had in the past. So I would support Councillor Fletcher on this, and like to formalize it in some way and ensure that the comments and concerns that have been expressed by numerous people here are really truly implemented.
Yeah. Just before we look at a motion, an amendment to the motion, could I ask if there are any other comments or questions?
Maureen, it's Paul.
Yes, Paul.
I just wanted to ask about the appointment of the auditor. I thought that we qualified or automatically qualified to use the city auditor. I thought that the city had a blanket contract for all the agencies, boards, and commissions for an auditor.
Jen, can you speak to that?
I'll pass that off to Kevin Lee to speak to, because he has been engaged in that process.
Thank you for the question. Councillor Ainsley there, through the chair, Councillor Ainsley, the agreement we have for the city auditor doesn't include this new corporation. We've just created this new corporation. It wasn't in the initial contract. We have approached the auditor though about the possibility of providing audit services for the Seniors Housing Corporation, and they are amenable. And we have a letter of engagement, a draft letter of engagement from them. I think there's a process to review that letter of engagement, ensure that it meets the needs of this corporation, and we can move forward with that process. So it's not an automatic, but we have reached out to KPMG, which is the city's auditor at this point, and we have been in dialogue with them.
And through the chair to Kevin, I thought it was an automatic. Like I sit on the library board and CNE. I thought there was a process had been put in place that it was just automatically given to KPMG when we did a report a few years ago when we were trying to streamline processes and save money.
That's not my understanding. I understand it's a separate engagement, but they are amenable to it, and the terms would be the same as the terms that all their other work that they do on our behalf is under.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks, Kevin. Thank you, Madam Chair. Those are my questions.
Any other questions? So, Paula, I think based on the comments, I think the board would welcome a motion to capture your intent that the selection of executive search firm and the retention of legal counsel be the responsibility of the board. So would you like to?
I'll move exactly what you said, Maureen.
Okay.
Carrie McNeil just seconded.
Seconded?
Yeah.
So that would be an amendment to the resolution that, I just lost myself here. The resolution that we adopt the preliminary work plan as described in the report and as amended, and that the board chair work with the transitional lead and chief operating officer and city staff to amend necessary and implement the work plan. So we have an amendment to the resolution that would provide for the board to establish the authority to the board to establish the executive search firm and to retain legal counsel directly. And we have a mover and a seconder. Any further discussion? I guess we have to take the amendment first. Do we have approval for the amendment? All in favor? Yes, Brenda? Did you have a question, Brenda? Sorry. I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Brenda.
Oh, sorry. Just a quick question. Will we be getting additional information during the summer as the board? Because I know we're not meeting again until September. So how will we know what the activities are during the summer? Will we be getting some sort of, I don't know if you want to call it a work plan, but just to get an idea of what's happening?
Yes, you will for sure. And can we come back to that after
Fine. No problem.
Thank you. So first of all, all in favor of the amendment? Any opposed? Carried. And then the resolution as amended. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. Monique, can you, I know you flashed something to me about not having a seconder for a previous motion and I didn't catch it. I'm sorry. Can you tell me what we're missing?
Yes, for item number 14, we were in a process of moving and seconding, but then we had a question and we never actually moved and seconded and voted on the motion. Can we?
Sorry. So that is the receipt of the report from the Deputy City Manager on the budget. Could I have a mover and a seconder for that?
Lawrence.
Lawrence, so moved. Sorry? Who seconded it? I'm sorry. I didn't hear. Brenda will second. Thank you. And we already passed it without having that that step, I believe. But just for the record, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Okay, thank you. So that takes us to the conclusion of the formal agenda. Before we have a motion to adjourn, let me come back to the question that Brenda raised about the summer. I would propose that, given that we will be completing the negotiations with the transitional lead, who will begin mid-July, that we would have a communication to the board further to this work plan once we have an opportunity to work that through. In addition, as you will recall, we have an orientation session in mid-September prior to our next board meeting. At the moment, the agenda for that, as established at our prior session, was the integrated services model. I've asked the staff I've indicated that there are 2 additional topics that I would like to see on the orientation agenda. One is an initial understanding of the committee structure and board policies of Toronto Community Housing, so that we can both understand the structures that they have in place, the relevance to us, the potential application or not to our potential committee structure as an orientation, so that we can then start thinking further about our board and committee structure in the fall. Thirdly, actually, I have asked for the orientation to include a briefing on existing processes for engagement of our tenants, our senior tenants, so that we can understand what is now in place and have that as part of our orientation in September. So again, none of this is decision making. It enables us to all get on the same page as to what the processes are that are in place, what the structures are, and a foundation for our subsequent discussion. So yes, Carrie?
I'm sorry, Maureen, your third point cut out completely. It was just static. I'm sorry. I didn't hear it at all.
Yes, the third topic is what are the current mechanisms and processes for tenant engagement that we will want to understand as a starting point before we move forward to have further discussion and decision as to how we want to shape that and make it our own. So, and I would like I'd like to let you know that I've been thinking about how to do this, and instead of us just being recipients of the information provided by staff, I'd like to engage small groups of you on the particular topics informally to sort of prepare for our orientation, so we can be utilizing our knowledge and expertise within the board to orient each other, as well as being oriented by staff. So that is just an informal approach that I'd like to take. I'd be happy to hear any questions or concerns at this point, but that will enable us, between the work plan and preparing for the orientation, to get us, I hope, over the summer with you engaged. And I would also indicate that the importance of your responding to the survey about the first orientation, because it gives a chance to understand what additional questions or issues you want to have addressed. So any further comments or questions about?
I do.
Yes.
I do, Maureen. I just want to thank you for your thoughtful and really critical leadership here. I think as we're having our first board meeting, we're all noticing that we're very happy that you are the chair of this new corporation. You're really thoughtful and well planning. So just, I know I feel like that. I'm sure everybody else does. I just thought it would be helpful to have, there's the tenant engagement system at Toronto Community Housing. And as everyone knows Linda was on TCHC and I've been on TCHC. And of all the 83 buildings, there are, I don't know how many of those already have elected their tenant reps or still outstanding. So it would be very helpful, I think, to have that report, those buildings pulled out, understand who's been elected, what the status is of that whole thing, and review from our point of view that that's a good system that's now in place, actually. And if we wanted to tweak it in any way, not to completely change it, because tenants have been through astronomical amounts of change. And Carrie will not note that, yes, tenant reps changed, everything's changed. So stay stable, understand what's the status, and is there anything that might make it better? I think that's a report you could circulate early, Maureen. I'm sure that can be provided to you from the COO of TCHC. Thank you.
Thank you. So Brenda?
Yeah, good points made here. I have some concern that we won't be meeting really for almost 3 months. And I feel a lack of engagement here and a furtherance of my knowledge of the organization. And one of the things I was interested in was possibly visiting various sites. I think we need, as the board, need to be a little more hands-on and at least knowledge base. I know we're not going to be engaged in operational matters, but I still think we need to engage more with the people we're representing and hoping to serve. So is there anything that can be done during the summer? I hear Paula's comment about the report on the tenant elections, but even for us to either informally meet with people or informally do visits, you know, I'm open to anything, but I just think the gap of 3 months in a new organization and no board meetings to me is of concern. So if we can fill, I mean, I understand the reasons for that. I don't have the luxury of choosing the summers off, but we as a board should be engaged in a little more active involvement in our knowledge and development of our perspective of what's gone on, so we get more sensitized to that. If we're hoping to expect the transition lead to get up to speed soon, I think the same can be said about us as a board. And I just have grave concerns about this 3 month gap. I've never been involved with a board that didn't meet for 3 months. So if you didn't show up for 3 board meetings, you would have been kicked off. So, you know, it's worrisome. And I understand the constraints, but I think we can fill it in with a whole bunch of knowledge and engagement, visits, whatever way we want to do it, recognizing sensitivity of some things. But you know, gosh golly, I think there's lots more we can do in 3 months.
Okay, thank you. All right, and I understand your concern, and that's I will ensure that we have some opportunities to be engaged as we move forward. I think if you can just leave that expectation with me, then I will, with the various things I mentioned, plus the potential opportunity to have a site visit of some level, leave that with me, and we'll see what we can do. So if there's no further business, I guess first of all, I'd like to wish everybody a peaceful and family reunion as we approach the summer. And I would also like to thank all of you for your engagement to this point to get us to the conclusion of the inaugural meeting of the board. And with that, I would ask for a motion for adjournment. Would like to move adjournment.
Who wants to leave, Maureen? We all want to stay.
Jim will move, and who would like to second that? I see Carrie, would you like to do so?
Paul has his hand up.
Okay.
Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you. Thank you. So all in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? Carried. And thank you again for the launch of the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation. I really look forward to working with you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen.
Congratulations, everybody. Stay
Bye.
safe
Thanks,
and well.
everyone.
Have a